quickly tell us a bit about yourself and the company that you helped co-found?
Sure. So I'm co-founder of Fast.ai, which is a nonprofit research lab. And we're trying to make deep learning, which is this very exciting field of AI, more accessible and easier to use. And so we do this both through building tools. We're working on an open source library called Fast.ai, which is a very kind of high level API that uses a lot of kind of best practices. And then we also have a course, Practical Deep Learning for Coders, that's freely available online. We've had over 100,000 students take it, and our students have gotten jobs at Google Brain, launched companies, been featured on had their work featured on HBO and in Forbes. So we've had a lot of kind of success stories. But we're particularly interested, I think, so the only prerequisite for our course is 1 year of coding experience. You don't have to have any advanced mathematics, but we still get you to the state of the art. And we're particularly interested in helping people, I think, kind of outside elite areas. And so people that are working on problems that they really care about. Like we had a student this fall who is a Canadian dairy farmer, and he wants to use AI to improve the health of his goat's udders. Okay. And I was just like, that is exactly the type of person that I want to help. So we've had students all over the world, many working with data sets that are smaller than most people think of or might be considered non-traditional in some way.
You gave some example, that, a Canadian farmer were using it. But when you look at, machine learning, deep learning, AI, are they connected or different? Or what is superset? What is a subset?
Okay, yeah. So the Venn diagram is AI is the outer circle. It's super broad. I think it's kind of a misleading phrase, artificial intelligence, because a lot of people think of humanoid robots or something, whereas that is not the work I'm doing. I'm also not doing, there's something called artificial general intelligence, of trying to like recreate human consciousness or something. And that's not the work that we're doing at Fast.ai. But so yeah, AI is the outer circle. Then machine learning, which is a way of using data and kind of if you have a set of what you the inputs are and what the outputs are, and kind of having an algorithm that learns itself from those. And so that can be something of, pictures of cats and dogs. Right. You have a bunch and you tell it, these are cats, these are dogs, and it learns to distinguish when you give it a new picture if it's a cat or a dog. So that's machine learning. And then deep learning refers to this class of algorithms called also known as multi-layered neural networks. And so if you hear people talking about neural networks, that's usually deep learning. And right now, most of the concrete advances in AI that you hear about in the media are all coming from deep learning. Okay. So deep learning is what is powering Skype Translator to translate in real time between different languages, or Google Translate. It also is powering, Google Photos to recognize what your pictures are of, and categorize them appropriately. That's all being done by deep learning. A lot of areas where you're seeing, I think, particularly exciting results are algorithms designed for very specific, domain-specific purposes. So it's like, this is a program that reads a CT scan of a lung and tells you if it's a cancerous tumor or not.
Right. And what role does open source play in the whole?
So it's hugely important. I first got interested in deep learning, I guess, about 5 years ago. And at that point, it was pretty frustrating to try to get into the field because it was very academic and it was mostly people that had done their PhD with like the same 4 advisors, and they weren't writing down kind of the practical hacks. And in the time since then, major companies have have open sourced their deep learning frameworks. So you have things like Google's TensorFlow or Facebook's PyTorch, which is excellent. And they've just made the field a lot more accessible. And the other thing that's really important, so it's open sourcing, the frameworks. Also, open sourcing models is very important.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, and that's something that is kind of a misconception in AI, that you have to have data sets the size of Google or something to be able to use deep learning. And that's not the case. You can take these models that have been trained and then shared, with their weights also being shared. So you can then apply that to your specific problem. So to give you an example, we had a student, so there's a competition called ImageNet, which really helped push the field forward. And it's classifying images from 1,000 different categories. And so this is kind of a well-known large data set. And so people then kind of share those models. And so we had a student that downloaded 20 pictures of people playing baseball, 20 pictures of people playing cricket, just retrain the last few layers. And this is a technique that we really focus on a lot in the course. It's called transfer learning, and it'll let you customize, this existing model to your particular problem. And he got 90% accuracy using just, I think he just had 30 images in the training set and then the other 10 test images. So you're on kind of very small data sets. But open source is a really important part of that, of people sharing their models and ways.
So because even when you have the model, it has to keep evolving, otherwise that...
Not necessarily. I mean, so... if you're thinking of a situation where you're getting new data, I imagine, and you're thinking like, I want to update my model, you can update it periodically, but often kind of getting to the point where you have a trained model that works, I would say is often the harder part. And then, there's this kind of like fine tuning you do to improve it or get it to kind of the final mile it's sharing kind of like the original working model. That's the important part.
So what are you doing here at the Open Source Leadership Summit?
So I was on the panel about AI earlier this morning. But yeah, it's also a kind of interesting opportunity to talk with people and meet more people. And I should say, like at Fast.ai, our course is all open and free, and we also have a library, Fast.ai, that is open source. And then that's built on top of PyTorch, which is another open source library. I mean, it's a very, it's exciting to be in kind of like an ecosystem where so many people are sharing what they're doing.
Anyway, thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully we'll see you again at the next Open Source Summit to talk more about machine learning and AI.
Thanks.